Hey, what's happening guys? Welcome to this channel to those who are new here. I've been doing videos where I talk about movies, productions, characters, plot, and what I like about them. And I love talk about films. And I thought it would make sense if I did Star Wars films, starting with the prequel trilogy. So grab yourselves Dweezil and Pally, or grab some death sticks if you don't want to rethink your life. Let's begin with Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. The story of Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi trying to protect Queen Padme Amidala of Naboo in hopes of securing a peaceful end to an interplanetary trade dispute. Anakin Skywalker tags along. So while George Lucas writes the original Star Wars movie, he decided the story was too extent to be covered in one film, so introduced a wider story arc that could be told in sequels if it became successful. Lucas negotiated a contract that allowed him to make 2 sequels, and over time created elaborate backstory to aid his writing process. He considered directions in which to take the story during the writing of The Empire Strikes Back. Darth Vader, revealed to be Luke Skywalker's father, Anakin Skywalker, who was a powerful Jedi Knight and a traitor to the Jedi Order. Lucas decided with his backstory in place the movies would work best as a trilogy. In Return of the Jedi, Darth Vader sacrifices himself for his son Luke. Through the entire 1980s, George Lucas has no desire to return to Star Wars and cancelled his sequel trilogy by the time Return of the Jedi came out. However, he had developed most of the backstory. The idea of prequels still fascinates him. During the early 1990s, Star Wars saw a resurgence in popularity in the wake of Dark Horse's comic line and Timothy Zahn's trilogy of novels. George Lucas saw that there was a still large audience for his idea of a prequel trilogy, and with the development of special effects generated with CGI, he considered returning to his saga and directing the film. There was announcement in Variety and other sources that he would be making the prequels in 1993. So he began trace the story. Anakin Skywalker, instead of Obi-Wan Kenobi, would be the protagonist, and the series would be a tragedy exploring Darth Vader's origins, having the story of Anakin similar to Luke's, where he grew up in Tatooine. George Lucas also began to change the prequel's timeline relative to the original series. Instead of filling in the tangential history, they would form the beginning of a long story that started with Anakin's childhood and his fate. This was the final step towards turning the franchise into a saga. On 1st of November 1994, George Lucas started writing the prequel trilogy. The script was adapted from Luke's 15-page outline that was written in 1976, which he designed to help him keep track of the characters, backstories and events that occurred before the original trilogy. Anakin was first written as a 12-year-old, but Lucas changed it to 9-year-old because he felt that lower age would be better fit to the plot. Point of Anakin being affected by his mother's separation from him. Later on, Anakin's younger age led Lucas to rewrite his participation in the movie's major scenes, so the title was originally to be called The Beginning, but then changed to The Phantom Menace, to reference Palpatine hiding his true identity as an evil Sith Lord behind the facade of a well-intentioned public servant, which I like the idea of. Lucas thought about a much grander, more epic scale, and said which is what he wanted Star Wars to be when the larger budget and possibilities opened up by the use of digital effects. As the movie ends with the ongoing plots leading one thing to another, the central story is Palpatine's intent to become Chancellor, which leads to the Trade Federation's attack on Naboo, the Jedi being sent there, Anakin being met along the way, and the rise of the Sith Lords. As with the original trilogy, Lucas intended The Phantom Menace to illustrate several themes throughout the narrative. Duality is a frequent theme. Amidala is a queen who possesses as a handmaiden. Palpatine plays on both sides of the war. Among others, balance is frequently suggested. Anakin is supposedly the one chosen to bring balance to the Force. Lucas said Anakin needed to have a mother, Obi-Wan needed a master, Darth Sidious needed an apprentice, as without interaction and dialogue, you wouldn't have the drama. On November 2015, Ron Howard said that he, Robert Zemeckis and Steven Spielberg were approached to direct The Phantom Menace, but they suggested to Lucas that he should direct the film. as they found the project too daunting. Lucas's producing partner Rick McCallum was preparing for the film. Before Lucas started writing, McCallum says that his experience with the young Indiana Jones Chronicles led to many of his decisions on the Phantom Menace, such as long-term deals with actors and sound stages, the employment of recent graduates with no film experience, and the creation of sets and landscapes with digital technology. So he started searching for the artists in art, architecture and design schools in April 1994, and in mid-year he began location scouting. Gavin Bouquet, the production designer, Duke Cheyenne, the industrial light and magic art director, impressed McCallum the most and was hired as the design director. On January 1995, art development of the film started. Lucas began the writing process within 3 to 4 months. Duke Cheyenne and his design team started a 2-year process of reviewing thousands of designs for the film, and said that Lucas intended Episode 1 to be stylistically different from the other Star Wars films. It would be richer and more like a period piece, since it was the history leading up to A New Hope. The story takes place on 3 planets, some with great environments such as the human and Gungan cities of Naboo, and 3 buildings in Coruscant. With the exception of the Gungan city, which had an Art Nouveau-inspired visual, these locations would be given distinctive looks with some bases in the real world. The concept drawings of Ralph McQuarrie for the original trilogy served as the basis for Mos Espa, taking inspiration from old Tunisian hotels and buildings, and had touches such as a marketplace to differentiate it from A New Hope. Mos Eisley and Coruscant, in particular, a metropolis design that turned into the basis for the Senate. Bouquet would later create the work of Cheyenne's team and design the interiors, translating the concepts into construction blueprints, with environments and architectural styles that had some basis in reality to give the audience something to key into. Some elements took inspiration from the original trilogy. Lucas described the battle droids as predecessors to the stormtroopers. Cheyenne uses that orientation to base the droids on the Imperial soldiers, only in the same style of stylized and elongated features seen in tribal African art. Teriel Whitlatch, who was in charge of creature design, had a background on zoology and anatomy. Many of the aliens are hybrids combining features of real animals. At times, entire food chains were developed, even though they're briefly in the film.
Here, you'll like these pallies. Here.
Whitlatch also designed detailed skeletons for the major characters and facial muscles on Jar Jar Binks as a reference for ILM's animators. Each creature would reflect its environment. Those on Naboo were more beautiful because the planet is lush and more animal-friendly. Tatooine has rough-looking creatures with weather-beating leathery skin to protect them from a harsh desert element, and Coruscant had bipedal, human-looking aliens. The extensive use of the new technique of digital pre-visualization is made using computers to essentially create 3D animated storyboards. This was done for dozens of scenes in the film, but was the first and primarily used in the pod race sequence. David Dozeret's animatronic supervisor, also in ILM, Alan worked on this sequence for nearly 3 years, and at one point had a 25-minute version of the race, although the film only included a 9-minute version.
Now this is pod racing!
Nick Gillard, the stunt coordinator, was recruited to create a new Jedi fighting style for the prequels. He likens the lightsaber battles to a chess game, with every move being a check due to their short-range weapons, and thought that the Jedi would have had to develop a fighting style that merged every sword fighting style, such as Kenjutsu styles, with other swinging techniques like as tennis swings and tree chopping. Gillard wrote a sequence that lasted around 60 seconds and intended to be around 5 or 6 sequences per fight. While training Liam Neeson and Ewan McGregor, George Lucas later referred to the Jedi as negotiators rather than high casualty soldiers. The preference of hand-to-hand combat was intended to give a spiritual and intellectual role to the Jedi due to the Nick Gillard thought that the stunt jumps with the actors and stuntmen dangling from wires did not look realistic. Air rams were used to propel them into the air instead. Lucas decided to make elaborate costumes because the film's society was more sophisticated than the one depicted in the original trilogy. Trisha Biggar, the designer, and her team created over 1,000 costumes that were inspired by various cultures. She works closely with Ian McCaig, concept designer, to create a colour palette for the inhabitants of each world. Tatooine with sun-bleached sand colours, Coruscant had greys, browns and blacks, and Naboo had green and gold for humans, while Gungans wore a leathery look like their skin. The Jedi costumes followed the tradition from the original film, especially Obi-Wan's costume from what Alec Guinness wore. George Lucas said Ian Biggar would look at the conceptual art to translate all of these designs into cloth and fabric and materials that would actually work and not look silly. Biggar also consulted Giller to ensure that the costumes would accommodate action scenes and consulted the creature department to find which fabrics wouldn't wear too heavily. On the alien skins, a huge wardrobe department was set up at Leavesden Film Studios to create over 250 costumes for the main actors and 5,000 for the background ones. They started filming the movie on 26th of June 1997 and finished on 30th of September 1995, which took place in Leavesden Film Studios in England. Tatooine Desert is shot near Nafta in Tunisia, and Naboo Royal Palace scenes were shot in the Palace of Caserta in Italy. After the filming was finished, the editing took 2 years to do. Paul Martin Smith started the process in England and focused on dialogue-heavy scenes. The film's sound editor Ben Burt was responsible for action sequences under Lucas' supervision. Non-linear editor systems played a large part in translating Lucas' vision. He constantly tweaked and revised and reworked shots and scenes. In March 1999, the final sound mix was added, and the following month, the film was completed after the delivery of the remaining visual effects shots. Those actors from the original trilogy reprised the role. Qui-Gon Jinn is played by Liam Neeson, which I think he's awesome. Qui-Gon Jinn is a Jedi Master who found young Anakin and believed he can bring balance in the Force and that he's the chosen one. He insists that he must be trained. Neeson was casted because Lucas thought Neeson to have a great skills and presence, describing him as a master actor who the other actors will look up to, who has got the qualities of strength that the character demands after originally having Obi-Wan as an older man. Ewan McGregor plays the younger version of Obi-Wan Kenobi, who in this movie is a Padawan. Ewan McGregor was casted because he looked like a younger version of Alec Guinness, which I totally agree. I think he nailed it. McGregor had a vocal coach to help his voice sound more like Guinness's. He also studied several of Guinness's performance from the original Star Wars and his early work. Natalie Portman plays Queen Padme Amidala of Naboo, who's hoping to protect her planet from the Trade Federation through the entire movie. She uses her real name and got one of the Queen's handmaidens pretending to be a queen for protection. And I think Portman is great as Padme. In the early script of the original Star Wars, Leia is the daughter of Owen and Beru Loz and seems to be Luke's cousin. Together they visit the grave of his mother, who perished with his father on the planet destroyed by the Death Star. Lucas answered a question in the interview about the development of the characters like Obi-Wan Kenobi, Luke and Leia. Their mother was not a factor. The first version talked about a princess and an old general. The second version involved a father, his son and his daughter. The daughter was the heroine of the film. Now the daughter has become Luke, Mark Hamill's character. Then Lucas wrote the script for the Phantom Menace. He envisioned a link between Padme and Princess Leia, the daughter who follows so closely in her footsteps. Over 200 actresses auditioned for the role. The production notes said that the role required a young woman who could be believable as the ruler of that planet, but at the same time be vulnerable and open, so they chose Natalie Portman, especially for her performances in Leon, the professional and beautiful girls, which impressed Lucas, and he said he was looking for someone who was young, strong, along the lines of Leia, and Natalie embodied all those traits and more. Portman wasn't familiar with Star Wars before being casted, although her cousins were obsessed with the movies and they're happy that Natalie is part of the franchise. The scenic gown was taken inspiration from traditional Mongolian royal fashion. Young Anakin Skywalker in this movie is played by Jake Lloyd, who's a 9-year-old slave. He's a good pilot and dreams to be a Jedi, which he eventually does, then fall to the dark side and become Darth Vader. And I think he did a good job with his acting and the chemistry with his mum, Shmi Skywalker. You can tell he's really sad to leave his mum. It's pretty heartbreaking. It shows he can act. Rick McCallum, the producer, said that Lloyd is smart, mischievous, and loves anything mechanical just like Anakin. And the fact that Lloyd has been bullied at school because of that role is horrible. They are definitely not Star Wars fan in my mind. Ian McDiarmid plays Sheev Palpatine, a senator of Naboo and secret Sith Lord known as Darth Sidious. I won't go into the creation and casting in this video due to his debut in the original trilogy. So when I eventually do Star Wars the original trilogy, I will get into more of Palpatine's creation and casting. And I think Ian is perfect as Palpatine. What can I say that hasn't been said already? Plus Palpatine is my favourite Sith Lord. Ian McDiarmid was surprised when Lucas approached him 16 years after Return of the Jedi to return, having assumed that a younger actor would play the role in the prequels. Ahmed Best plays Jar Jar Binks, a clumsy Gungan exiled from his home and taken in by Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. Robin Gurlins, the casting director, saw Ahmed Best on a Stomp performance in San Francisco and hired him. He was originally just doing a motion capture, but he requested to voice Jar Jar, and it was accepted. He improvised movements to make Jar Jar look as clumsy and comedic as possible. I think Ahmed Best is a terrific actor. The character Jar Jar Binks is known as a comic relief by the audience, as we all know that the character is hated by the critics and the audience, and some considered him racist caricature. I'm so glad Ahmed Best eventually got to play a Jedi in The Mandalorian. That's really what I've always wanted to see. And even the fans welcomed him, which is awesome. Anthony Daniels plays C-3PO, who's a protocol droid that Anakin built. It was pretty funny when he got called naked.
I beg your pardon, but what do you mean, naked? My parts are showing. My goodness.
As he's just a skeleton figure. Kenny Baker plays R2-D2, an astromech droid from Naboo who survived saving Queen Amidala's ship, while other droids snuffed it. I love R2-D2, he's pretty cool. Apparently Kenny was used for scenes where R2 bends forward and backwards and wobbles from side to side. Robots and a digital model were used in other shots. Darth Maul in this movie is played by Ray Parks, but he's voiced by Peter Serafinowicz. And I think this is a fantastic performance. The character is outstanding. The production designer Gavin Bouquet got really frustrated with the drawing, so concept artist Ian McCaig started covering it in tape. Both he and George Lucas liked the result. Described as a kind of Rorschach pattern, the last drawing has McCaig's own face with the skin removed and some Rorschach experimentation, dropping ink into a paper, folding it in half, then opening. Maul's facial tattoos took inspiration from indigenous peoples of Brazil, and the character is described as a thing of nightmares when his art design is finished. Originally Maul's head had feathers based on prayer totems, but the creature effects crew led by Nick Dutman interpreted those feathers as horns, modifying his feathers into those common in popular depictions of the devil. Maul's outfit was also modified from a tight bodysuit with a muscle pattern to the Sith robe based on samurai pleats. Because the lightsaber battles has many exercises like jumping, spinning, running and rolling, another concept had Maul a masked figure, something that could be similar to Darth Vader, while senatorial characters would sport painted and tattooed faces. It was later decided to apply the painted and tattooed faces to Maul rather than the senator. I think he's fantastic. Lucas decided to bring back Darth Maul for the Clone Wars. There's questions on how he survived after he got cut in half by Obi-Wan, but Lucas is like, I don't know, go figure. Yoda is voiced by Frank Oz, who's the Jedi Master, the head of the Jedi Council, and he's centuries old. He was very reluctant to allow Anakin to be trained. In the original version, he was a puppet based on Stuart Freeborn's original design done by Nick Dutman. The character was fitted around Oz's schedule as he was finishing his work on In and Out. A CGI Yoda is in two distant shots. Warwick Davis played him in the scene where Obi-Wan becomes a Jedi Knight. George Lucas wanted to use a full-time digital Yoda, but the attempts did not work well enough at the time. So when 2011 Blu-ray release of the movie came along, the CGI Yoda got replaced. I really like Yoda, I thought he's pretty cool. Samuel L. Jackson plays Mace Windu, a Jedi Master who's the high-ranking member of the Jedi Council. I think he's fantastic. He's pretty badass. I also like the fact that he uses purple lightsaber. That's because Samuel L. Jackson requested it to George Lucas to make the character easily distinguishable in the large battle scenes, which is a great idea. Many early incarnations of the character who would become Mace Windu were developed in Lucas' original Star Wars script as a narrator, Princess Leia's brother and Luke Skywalker's friend. However, the process of redrafting and copy editing his character was removed from the original trilogy, but was reintroduced in 1994 when Lucas began the prequel trilogy. Pernilla August plays Shmi Skywalker, Anakin's mum, who's concerned for her son's future and allows him to leave with the Jedi. Apparently Pernilla was chosen after auditioning with Liam Neeson. She was worried of being rejected because of her accent, and I think she did a great job, especially her chemistry with Jake Lloyd, like I said. Oliver Ford Davis plays Sio Bibble, the Naboo governor, and I think he's great as well. Hugh Quashire plays Captain Quarish Panaka, Amidala's chief of security at the Theed Palace. I really like the character and the actor's performance. It's a shame that he only appeared in The Phantom Menace. He thought the way he conceived of the role is very tough. Obviously no one out-toughed the Jedi, but Captain Panaka was going to give them a runaway for their money, he said. Terrence Stamp plays Finis Balaram, the Galactic Republic's Supreme Chancellor. And I think Stamp is great. Every time I watch that scene, I'm like, General Zod in Star Wars.
Kneel before Zod!
Keira Knightley plays Sabe, a decoy of Queen Amidala throughout this movie. She's also voiced up by Natalie Portman, which I think they're great. Keira was chosen due to her close resemblance to Portman. A lot of people, including their mothers, had trouble telling them apart during the filming of the movie. Brian Blessed plays Bosnas, a Gungan tribe leader, and I thought he was fantastic, especially during the conversation.
We saw being friends.
Now, apparently during the conversation, George Lucas said that the actor's energy was needed for the movie and that he himself thought of casting Blessed as one of the Jedi, but he was much too powerful for the part. When he played Bosnas, Blessed recalls that his performance met with approval from Lucas. Andy Secombe voiced Watto, a junk dealer on Tatooine who owns Shmi Skywalker as well as her son, Anakin Skywalker, as slaves. Watto's design was an amalgam of rejected ideas. His expressions were based on video footage of Secombe's voice acting, Rob Coleman's photographs of animation supervisor imitating the character, and Steve Alpin modular saying Watto's lines to a mirror, and I think he gives off great performance.
Credits will do fine.
No, they won't! What, you think you're some kind of Jedi waving your hand around like that?
Lewis MacLeod voiced Sebulba, a not a nice pod racer, and Anakin's main nemesis. Sebulba's design was described as a spider crossed with an orangutan crossed with a sloth by Lucas, with a camel-like face and clothing inspired by medieval armour, and I think he gives off great performance too, playing a character you love to hate. Alan Rusko plays Plo Koon, is a Keldor that's force sensitive and a Jedi Master, and I thought he's cool. During the plans, Plo Koon was known as Plon Koon, named after Nick Dudman's son's nickname for the information of without the mask, an image of Plo Koon without his goggles, exposing his closed eyes in an old Star Wars databank. However, in question, as the image appears in the behind the scenes section as a pre-production concept module and does not necessarily reflect the reality of the character. Matthew Wood plays Bib Fortuna, who's a chief aide to Jabba the Hutt, and I thought the character looked grim. Sean Harrison, the makeup artist, worked on the character as well as the several other creatures and aliens in The Phantom Menace, including Jar Jar Binks. Jabba the Hutt is a crime lord, and I thought he looked pretty gross, voiced by John Judgman. Although the end credits, jokingly, the character is credited as himself, which is pretty amusing. Silas Carson played Newt Gunray, the Viceroy of the Trade Federation who led Naboo's invasion and tries to force Queen Amidala to sign a treaty to legitimize their job of the planet. After Lucas and McCallum listened to the various language, decides how the Nemoidians would speak Newt Gunray's Thai accent was chosen. Silas Carson also played Lot Dodd, a Trade Federation senator, and Ki-Adi-Mundi, a powerful Jedi Master who's wise. Jeremiah St. John Blake plays Rune Oko, Gunray's chief lieutenant and settle officer in the Trade Federation, with James Taylor voicing him. Hopper Aransas, a Jedi Master. Orn Frey, Twi'lek senator, and Mas Amidar, a Shagrian politician and vice chair of the Galactic Senate. Warwick Davis plays Weasel, aka Podrace Spectator. He reprised the role in Solo, a Star Wars story, which is cool. He also played a Rhodian slave in Tatooine. George Lucas wanted Warwick to play a character without wearing the mask, and there he is. The scene was filmed one day at Leavesden Studios in England. There's a lot of things in this movie to like. The atmosphere where we see Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon.
I have a bad feeling about this.
I don't sense anything.
The lightsaber duel has got some style in there. The scene where Jar Jar leads Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon to the Gungan city is phenomenal. The effects on the city, and especially John Williams' music score. He decided to use electronic instruments such as synthesizers. The big fish looks pretty scary.
There's always a bigger fish.
Plus, Jar Jar often gets picked on in the movie, which I think people would know he's going to be hated. There's a lot of great stuff in the pod race. I like the idea of it. Plus, I do think they should do a Star Wars movie focusing on the pod race.
Wait, I'm tired.
Anakin, drop!
Luckily, Qui-Gon was pretty quick to warn Anakin.
Anakin, drop!
I liked Anakin's chemistry with Padme in that scene.
I made this for you. So you'd remember me. I carved it out of a poor snippet. It'll bring you good fortune.
It's beautiful. But I don't need this to remember you by.
There's some pretty good graphics with the sunset where Jedi sits around. I also like the story arc with Darth Sidious where none of the Jedi or Senator knew who Palpatine is.
The Senate is full of greedy, squabbling delegates. The Chancellor should never have brought them into this. Kill them immediately.
Yes, my lord.
The idea of 4 battle scenes at the same time isn't a bad idea. To those who saying talking scenes are boring, well, lucky for them, 4 battle scenes that they will find to kill off the time. We got a pretty cool scene where Jar Jar and Gungan fight battle droids. Jar Jar does a pretty cool stunt. There's Anakin flying into space with R2 to blow the droid ship up. Padme and Panaka facing battle droids and Viceroy. My favourite scene in the movie has got to be the Darth Maul fight scene, the entrance. Camera closing up. Sorry. Honestly, this battle scene is a blast to watch. Also, the Duel of the Fates by John Williams. We get an emotional scene where Qui-Gon dies. His funeral is pretty effective. I like the look of Plasma Ball that Boston has carried. And I think there's lots of great stuff in there. I think you have missed out on the good stuff here. As the movie got released, it accompanied by a considerable amount of attention. The Wall Street Journal said so many workers announced plans to view the premiere that many companies closed on the opening day. Outside of the cinemas was packed over a month before ticket sales started. Theatre lines appeared when it was announced that cinemas were not allowed to sell tickets in advance until 2 weeks into the release due to the concerns of that family theatre goers would be either unable to receive tickets or would be forced to pay higher prices for them. Instead, tickets were to be sold on a first-come, first-served basis, although after meetings with the National Association of Theatre Owners, Lucasfilm agreed to allow advanced ticket sales on 12th of May 1999, provided there was a limit of 12 tickets per customer. What happened is some advanced tickets were sold by scalpers at prices as high as US $100 a piece, which a distribution chief called horrible and said was exactly what they wanted to avoid. Daily Verity said Lucasfilm instructed that the theatre owners that the film could only play in the cinema's largest auditorium for the first 8 to 12 weeks. No honor passes were allowed for the first 8 weeks, and they were obligated to send their payments to distributor 20th Century Fox within 7 days. There's been worries of the film being finished on time. However, 2 weeks before its theatrical release, Lucasfilm moved the release date from May 21st to 19th, 1999. to give a head start to the fans by allowing them to view it during a week and allowing families to view it during the weekends. Weird Al Yankovic did a parody song and music video. The saga begins a month after the release of The Phantom Menace, explaining Obi-Wan's point of view to the tune of American Pie.
Here Anakin guy, maybe Vader someday later, now he's just a small fry.
Which got included in 2011 Star Wars Blu-ray bonus feature. Natalie Portman returned as Queen Amidala. In a 2018 Saturday Night Live comedy rap video to defend the prequels, Darth Maul's dual style served as the inspiration for the 2003 viral video Star Wars Kid. It was announced on 28th of September 2010, my 12th birthday, that episode 1 to 6 would be stereo converted to 3D. They would re-release in the films in order, starting with The Phantom Menace on 10th of February 2012. But after Lucasfilm was bought by the Walt Disney Company, the 3D re-releases on the rest of the films were cancelled to focus on Episode 7, The Force Awakens. So, that's The Phantom Menace. There's a lot of great things in there, like I said, lot to love. Coming next is Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones.